right, so I'm here today with Interim Director of Master of Physician Assistant Studies at the University of Manitoba, Max Rady College of Medicine, Ms. Rebecca Mueller.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for having me, Neosha.
Thank you so much for being here and your time. So we're just going to go through and I'll ask you a few questions. And to start with, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you came to this point in your career?
Yeah, so I'm originally from the United States, and I always knew that I wanted to do something in medicine. And so it took me a bit to figure out that I wanted to be a PA, but not that long because in the States, PAs are so much more common. And I actually grew up as a child seeing a PA. So I knew of the profession, certainly knew what it was. It was more deciding what kind of lifestyle I wanted long term. Physician, and did I want to dedicate all that to time to education, or did I want to get out and see patients sooner and on a faster scale? So I did end up deciding PA quite early on, and my alma mater is Chicago, and I graduated 2010 there. Prior to that, I had worked in nursing for about a decade, so I was also quite familiar with the healthcare system at the time. I moved to Ontario, just north of Toronto, in 2010, and I worked in oncology and palliative care. Owen Sound is where I started doing in-hospital and outpatient care, and then I eventually did transition to Brampton, where I set up and ran a 24/7 palliative care service for the community there, in which we gave service at home, in clinic, as well as hospice care. I started my career in academics around 2013. I began as a guest lecturer, transitioned to a sessional instructor running the oncology unit at St. Catherine University in Minneapolis. I also started teaching at the university at my alma mater in Chicago called Rosalind Franklin. And I began teaching part-time at McMaster in 2016, yes. I think it was 2016. And then I moved to Manitoba in 2020 and began teaching at this program 2 years ago. So.
Wow, that's quite a diverse portfolio. You've done so much. So now you are the interim director for MPAS right now.
Yes.
How is this new role treating you so far?
I've been in this role for about 6 weeks now, so it's still very new. I think we're still as a team transitioning. I'm still learning. There's lots of pieces to the bureaucracy of a university that I'm really learning, and I appreciate the team's patience, the patience students have with me while I navigate that as well as the rest of the university. And overall, I would say everybody's very kind and understanding that I haven't been exposed to some of that before as I learn that process. I'm also getting significant support and help from those who have come before me. So Ian Jones had this position prior to me. He certainly always makes himself available if I have a need, as well as the directors of the other two programs that we have in Canada. So Kristen Burrows is at McMaster University, and actually the University of Toronto is in a transition period as well. And I'm actually not certain who's taking over that role, but Leslie is on her way out of that role, and she thus far has made herself very available for support as well.
Oh wow, that's really wonderful that you're getting that support in this new role, and all the help you can get because it's a big role. So will there be any changes to the admissions process next year now that you are the new interim director?
Yeah, I suppose that's what everybody's big question is, how do you get in? I will start by saying changes are not, they might be initiated or led by me, but they're not up to me. And that is the truth for every program, and that is how it should be, right? And those checks and balances have to be there for any kind of leadership role, right? If that's in university or government or wherever, we have to have checks and balances. So we have an admissions committee, and any changes to the upcoming admissions cycle are at the decision of the committee, not me. Okay. I don't know what the committee is going to decide yet. There would be potential changes. However, those changes are likely to come into effect a whole year later because the cycle for this year, so for the start of the class of 2025, and they would begin their education at MPAS next fall, 2023. Yes, they're applying right now. That application process opened in the spring of 2021. So no changes could ethically occur at this point for those applying right now,
Right.
because that would be very unfair to, it doesn't work. We've already received applications, right? It just doesn't
Sure.
work. So any changes that might potentially occur would not occur for those applying right now
Yes.
and would occur coming after that. If the committee makes those decisions, the program will make that information available to everybody.
Perfect. That's good to be transparent so that everyone knows the changes and what to look forward to.
Yeah.
What are some unique qualities of the MPAS program as you
Yeah.
think?
I think, my answer to that question is that I think we have a great program. Obviously, I really support our program. I've also worked for the McMaster program, and I'm pretty familiar with the University of Toronto program as well. We have 3 programs in this country. Our profession is in extreme demand in terms of the programs. All 3 programs have an admission rate, roughly somewhere around 9-10% of the applicants will actually have a chance of getting into the program. This is highly rigorous, as you know. So I could sit here and say that we have all these wonderful qualities, but I think it is much better for me to advocate for the profession as a whole. These 3 programs need to work in conjunction and collaboration in order to promote the profession on a global and national scale so that we can become active in every single province, have regulation and funding in every province in Canada. So yes, I think that we have a wonderful program. I like how we deliver our program. We have a really unique application to the education, but it is no better or worse than the other programs here. We all work together.
Yeah. Well said. All right. So do you think, I know we spoke about the admissions process, do you think there will be any changes to the curriculum or the program going forward in the incoming classes?
I think any changes that you see under my leadership are going to not be in the immediate future, are going to not address curriculum changes at the level that require approval. So a curriculum gets created and by your core group, by your core team, and then that needs to be approved by, in our case, the medicine, the Department of Family Medicine. We're also under graduate studies, so the faculty of graduate studies will have to approve it. And then from there, it has to be approved at the level of Senate, and from there, it has to be approved at the level of accreditation. That process is a multi-year process, right? It's not like you can just make a decision and decide to change things arbitrarily because I want to. And we just received a 6-year accreditation in April 2021. So at the moment, I don't think it is prudent to put a lot of effort into making really core curricular changes when we've already been told it's a good curriculum and a full approval for 6 years. So the changes that I think we should focus on under our team right now and under me as leadership are on a more granular level. I think we should focus on the MPAS program being very intricately involved with the community. And I mean that both on the level of community of practicing PAs in the province of Manitoba, as well as the community of patients that we see. So I would like us to see us become more involved in that. I would like us to see us integrated more with the Department of Family Medicine because we are under them. So maybe making some changes that align with them that don't necessarily affect the core curriculum. So in short, after that long explanation, no, I don't see big changes to the curriculum in our near future.
Okay, I think those are wonderful ideas to get more involved in the community. That's much needed. So now when we talk about my page, I always get questions about, how do we get in? Is this going to be good enough? Is this going to, so some questions that I get asked are, is being a medical assistant going to help my application? Is having a master's degree prior to applying help me in my application? Is being a research assistant before help me in my application? What do you have to say to those?
First, I have to say I really empathize with all of the applicants. It's really hard to get into this program. We would all like to see that change. And how we would change that isn't to decrease the intensity of what's required to apply, but rather increase the seats of availability. Because the reality is that a large number of people who apply who don't get in are still qualified to be here and would make excellent PAs. So if you don't make it into this program or McMaster or University of Toronto's program, that doesn't mean you're not really qualified to be there. It means that we all have very limited number of seats. So we do hope to see that change. I don't know if that's going to change right now or not. Time will tell. A lot of that is dependent on what we can fund, because there is an ethical obligation that we have as a program. Okay, we have 15 students. Yes, it's small. Maybe that's one of the benefits. But we could increase our cohort size and still be small and have that one-on-one educational system. But we can only do that if we feel confident that the government is going to have funding for jobs there. If we take 30 students and we only have 15 jobs that come up, then we've taken all this money from these people who are really wanting to practice, and we know we don't have jobs. So this has to be a combined effort. It requires a significant amount of advocacy work, which I am doing. I am working on that in conjunction with other practicing and notable PAs in the community, and we are reaching out to the CMO of Shared Health, the WRHA, OHS. These are prominent organizations that need to know that we're here, and that we need to work on how to, on paper, make the funding for jobs appear, not just arbitrarily say we need PAs, we want more PAs, and to actually make something happen, as well as aligning that with the political party, whether or not it's the party in charge or not. All parties who are in Manitoba need to know about PAs, so we are also working closely with advocacy among all the political parties here and the Minister of Health.
For sure. Thank you so much. Those are very, I'm sure, encouraging words to hear for the future applicants.
I hope so. It doesn't directly answer that though, so I will directly answer that. So besides saying that, we need to increase seats and we will do so when it's ethically viable to do so, and that you should not feel inadequate if you don't get in. Okay. Beyond saying that, to answer those questions, yes, it helps to have patient care experience. It doesn't mean you have to be a medical assistant.
Yeah.
But you need to know when you come into this profession, you need to already know what it is. You need to already be dedicated to the PA profession. You can't be coming and applying just learning about what the job is. You need to come knowing that you are ready to handle the rigor of medicine and what that means. And the best way to know that is to already be involved in it. So whether that be as a nurse, a medical assistant, a CNA, a pharmacy assistant, social work, physical therapy, any of these jobs are wonderful jobs. All patient care experience will matter. Patient care experience is not required to apply, and there are people who have gotten into the program who don't have a medical background. So although I think that it does add something to your application, it doesn't make or break you.
Right.
The research question, yes. Yes, anything that you can do that would, enhance your application is good.
Yes.
We are not a research-based program. We do have the capstone component, which you can do as primary research, but the bulk of your time in this program, or any of the 3 programs, is very heavy on simply absorption of knowledge. And then applying that knowledge.
Yes.
I think it's really an impossible task to ask a student to do deep research while they're in the PA program. So research helps. We need more research within the PA profession. So if you have a research background and you're able to do that, at least even in your future once you graduate, that is an asset. Again, it's not a requirement. It doesn't make or break it.
Yes.
I would say a big portion to focus on in the initial application process is a statement of intent, right? And your statement of intent, can you write at a graduate level, right? So do you sound professional in your writing? Is it free of grammatical errors? Okay, to be frankly honest, if you send something in that has a lot of errors, it's not going to be considered.
Yeah.
Because you can't come here not having the basic ability to write. So you need to be able to write at a graduate level and convey your message within a concise way. What should your message be on your statement of intent? Clearly, it needs to demonstrate comprehensive knowledge of the healthcare system and the PA profession,
Yes.
and your dedication to coming here. Right. Beyond that, I mean, it can be up to you as the applicant what you're going to include in that.
For
Show
sure.
us who you are. Yeah, let us get to know you through a letter as much as that is possible. After that initial process, then comes interview processes and MMI type things. You actually, I don't think, got to participate in the MMI because we were doing everything virtually with COVID.
Yes.
And we shall see what we're able to do this year, if we can do an in-person MMI or if we have to keep things online. It's all dependent on what the situation
Yes.
looks like at the time. But that, I would say, is far more critical
Yes.
than the initial application. Because the initial application is just like, do you have a good GPA? You know, you're kind of ticking boxes.
Right.
Then you get to actually interact with other people, and it gives us an idea of who you are. It's crucial that you are that we're putting PAs into the community who are not just intelligent. Being smart isn't good enough.
Yes.
In fact, being smart might even be lower on the priority list. Can you absorb information at a rapid pace?
Yes.
And can you maintain your professionalism, integrity, and resiliency while doing that? And simultaneously advocate for your patients.
Yes.
You have to be able to see a patient as a whole, integrate knowledge from different courses, and think critically to problem solve solutions. You know, Manitoba in particular, although not the only province with this issue, it certainly is well known to have an issue of healthcare access, particularly in northern communities. So there's one thing to know, memorize, and understand the standard of care. And there's another thing to work in an area where you don't have access.
Yes.
So, okay, you have a patient who's diabetic and they're showing up in crisis and you have to manage it, but you don't have resources. So how are you going to creatively tackle this issue? And the only way to do that is to think critically and be able to integrate from your knowledge from all these pieces. So that's what you need to demonstrate and show us in the interview. And I would say that's far more crucial than the initial application.
That's great. Like, you answered the next question I
Okay.
had about personal statement and interviews, like your advice. So that's probably going to be very, very helpful.
I hope so.
So the next question is, what advice do you have for the didactic year, like the incoming PAs, PAs, the students, like the incoming class 2024?
Honestly, I think you would have better advice for them than me because I went through this so long ago. However, I guess my advice would be to do your best. There's a lot of resiliency that you need for the first year in particular. That the first didactic year is not reflective of what your actual practice is going to be like. It is simply the groundwork put in place so that you can go out and see patients. And I think the other thing, at least that relates specifically to our program and not necessarily directly to the other programs, but the way our program is set up is that you have frequent exams. I think on average you have an exam every 2 weeks on average, and there are finals weeks where you're taking 1 or 2 exams every day.
Yes.
You cannot expect yourself to get A's on everything. And it is okay if you happen to not pass something. You have to fix that issue. Like, you can't just allow it to continue. You have to bridge your knowledge gap. But the rigor of the first year is such that you can't have expectations of yourself to make a solid high mark, which I do think is the opposite of what most people have coming in. Most people coming in have excessively high GPAs. Everyone coming in this program is used to getting an A and used to being able to handle rigorous academic activity. And this is just another level. It really, really is. And I'm not the only person to say that. And maybe that is hard to comprehend until you're in it.
Yes.
But remove the pressure of a grade. Yes, you have to pass. But look at this more as like did I pass or did I not? Because you gotta pass. And then, am I understanding and comprehending? Am I able to integrate my knowledge from anatomy into the emergency medicine course and into the pharmacology information into adult medicine?
Yes.
Because if you're doing that, but your mark is 70%, that's great. I mean, that's great, right? Because then you're accomplishing something.
Yes.
If you're getting nearly 100% of the exams, but then you're unable to bring that information from your different courses together, then you're actually having a bigger gap than someone who has a lower mark but is able to integrate the knowledge. It's a hard year. And that's what I'm going to leave it at. That it's a really
I
hard
agree.
year. It's a very hard year. Yeah.
And yes, I totally understand. I agree when you said, like, coming in from undergrad to this program, everyone's straight A students, and coming in and not getting that, in the first few courses, it's going to hit them. It was hard for me and most of my classmates, but it'll be okay. At the end of the term 3, I was like, I just have to pass.
That's it. That's it. You have to pass.
It completely changed. It took a 360. So yes, I totally agree with that. And so one thing I would like to also add, just before I forget, is you said, working in healthcare, having that patient encounter like experience is very good. But also, I would like to know, volunteering, is that okay as well?
Oh yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Right. I mean, you're going to once you graduate and you are working, you are a leader in the community.
Yes.
You are a leader in medicine. People will come to you looking for your advice, looking for your help. And I think the best PAs are ones that can actually continue to integrate volunteerism in the community. That being said, I mean, it's not always, it's a challenge, right? So like you graduate, maybe you want to volunteer, but you're also working really hard those first couple of years to be good at your job. So I mean, allowing yourself some space to accommodate all those things. We have to look at our careers as lifelong progression within medicine and the community, bringing it together.
Yes.
So of course, volunteering is a huge asset.
Yes.
In fact, I would say it's something like we're looking for people who are dedicated to their communities. And there's different ways to demonstrate that. And sometimes that's volunteering and sometimes it's not. It might be other manners, but that is somebody that we want to be a PA.
Amazing. Okay, that's good. And I would also like to add the curriculum. Our curriculum is a spiral curriculum that we have, and that helps so much. When you're in it, you're like, oh, like we did learn this before, but then you fill in the gaps because you're learning that particular subject in a different course, but then it's different somehow because they're touching on different aspects of the course. So the spiral method is amazing.
I think anything you see in medicine, you have to see multiple times in order to really grasp it. It does take, like, there's one thing understanding what you're hearing or reading, and another thing to be able to regurgitate it, and another thing to be able to see how that integrates into comorbid conditions. And so you have to see it multiple times. Yeah. Yes,
for sure. I totally agree. Okay, so the last question I have is, what advice do you have for the clinical year that I'm going into now?
The clinical year is a lot. My personal opinion is that the clinical year is a lot more fun. It's a lot more enjoyable. Maybe fun's the wrong word. It's more enjoyable and it's more rewarding.
Yes.
The first year is not very rewarding. Like, regardless of whatever grades you are obtaining, it's not a very rewarding year because it's pretty relentless and just study. You can't cram for an exam. And there's no feedback on like, well, at least I helped somebody. You're just fairly miserable. The second year, you are actually seeing patients, and you're proving to yourself that you do have some knowledge. You're also proving to yourself that you still know nothing and you need help. And there's a humble aspect to that, and to be able to realize that the more you know, the more you realize you don't know, right? As you go through, but you see it and you interact with patients. It's so much more rewarding. You're not sitting in front of a book or a screen studying 40 hours a week. You are actually in clinic or hospital that amount of time, and that's what you came here to do. So it's far more rewarding. In terms of advice, it's still very rigorous. So do not expect that you're only going to work 40 hours a week, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. It's not going to happen. Because the objectives of second year are that we give you a broad range of experience within all the different major aspects of healthcare, right? So you see at 2 a.m. in the ER a very different subset of patients than you see at 4 p.m., right? So you do need to experience a broad range of working conditions, and that means that you're not going to just work a standard 40-hour day shift during your clinical year. So you need to be prepared for a lot of hours in there. And I think that that can be very challenging with everybody's home life. First year is pretty standard Monday to Friday, and you're studying after that.
Yeah.
But it's not, you can use your time as you want outside of the standard hours. Second year, you can't. Second year, you have to be dedicated to working in clinic a lot of hours. And then if you have that, then beyond that, I would say if you have the ability to look up your patients the day before, do that. Right? Look up the conditions they have, review that. Sometimes you can't do that. In the case of ER, for example, you don't know who's coming in, but then you review it when you go home. So the condition you learned about today that you still didn't feel great about, you go review that condition again at home. Ask intelligent questions. Don't be afraid to step up to the plate. There are some rotations where you might be the only student there. If that's the case, you're going to have lots of opportunity to learn. But if you're at a city hospital, there are third and fourth year medical students. There might be other PA students. There'll be interns. There'll be residents 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up, depending on if you're in surgery, you have your resident there. So there are a lot of competition for the learning opportunity, particularly procedures. So you have to advocate for yourself, and you can't be afraid to step up to the plate and just say it. Say, yes, I would really like to perform this lumbar puncture under your supervision guidance. Right? And don't be afraid to argue for that, because you're just as deserving for that experience as any other student there. So you do have to advocate and be intelligent and absorb what you can, and also have a very high standard of professionalism. You are not just representing yourself. Unfortunately, the reality that comes with working in an up-and-coming profession is that you are representative of the profession as a whole. And so of the current students, of current practicing PAs, and people who want to become PAs. You are representative of that, whether you like it or not. So you have to hold yourself with a very high standard of professionalism, regardless of what is going on around you.
Sure, that is great advice. I am making mental notes.
I hope it's helpful.
It is all very helpful. I think I asked you all the questions I had for today. Are there any concluding remarks you'd like to make about the program or the future of the program for the applicants, admissions, anything like that?
Well, first I have to speak to your audience. Thank you for listening to Neosha's work here. She works very hard in promoting the profession and working within the community. Also, thank you for being interested in the PA profession. I assume if you're watching this, it's because you are interested in what your future could bring in this profession. For all the negatives we discussed today, there are a lot, right? It's a very hard program to get through. The reward is high. It's worth it. You are going to have a good job at the end. You can practice medicine without, you can get to practicing medicine faster than if you're going other routes. So for example, I worked in oncology and palliative care. I started doing that with a 2-year master's rather than, with 12 years of study. So you can get to your goal faster, which is nice. And you see patients and you make a difference in this world, in your local town, city, region, as well as on the national level. We make a difference, and it feels really good to be part of a profession doing that. So I hope you join us.
So you have been so helpful, and you've dedicated your time to do this in a very busy schedule. So I really, really appreciate it, and I'm sure everyone watching appreciates this too.
Thank you so much, Neosha. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.